Hey there, welcome back to Featherwood Farm. I'm thinking I'm going to try out starting a new series where I just sort of show everything that I've kind of done throughout a week, kind of my day-to-day things that don't necessarily merit their own full video, but that depict the actual goings on around the farm and the gardens. And it's springtime, so there is a never-ending amount of things to be done, such as pruning back these lavender, which are a mixture of Hitco and Munstead. I did not prune them at all last year, so shame on me. I will do better this year. And I was pretty merciless cutting them back. And, this was actually a fun task because it smelled so good doing that. And then I finally got around to cleaning up this raised bed that I had grown the heirloom chrysanthemums in, which will not remain in this bed. I will transplant them. I'm thinking to keep them still inside the cottage garden area, maybe next to the greenhouse, but I have not fully decided, and I have a lot more rooted cuttings that'll be coming in soon. I got around to hanging some of the little decor things. Brandon got me this little plaque for Christmas, beware of the ghosts, because, there are definitely ghosts in our gardens. It adds a fun little touch. And then, of course, just, all of the picking up things. So much picking up to do. This is picking up things that I left out from last year, picking up things that I left from projects that I've done this year. I'm not the most collected gardener. I'm not as responsible as I should be. So I have to treat myself like a toddler and just clean up after myself after the fact. And I've accepted that. That is the way that I work. And it is okay so far. But I am planning on building a potting shed, or a potting bench, and a small tool shed, kind of like an open air type shed, right behind the workshop actually, where hopefully it'll help me kind of keep my things in one concentrated area. That's the goal, at least. I think it should work, and that's kind of a central gathering area for me anywhere. That's where a lot of things will end up regardless. And then, of course, I got to actually start cleaning up the beds, which always feels so good. I love going through and doing the weeding and the cutting back and, seeing what survived from last year. Really, really fun for me. This one was an easy one because this garden doesn't have many plants. It's the new one that I put in last year. And you can kind of see the fence in this video is waving all over the place. We had some pretty bad storms that actually broke some of the posts on the privacy fence, so I have to go through and replace those. I should probably do it sooner rather than later so the whole fences don't just fall down, but yeah, I'll get to it. I will get to it eventually. For now, I have a T-post kind of supporting them so they don't fall over on me. And cleaning up this pathway that will just never be clear because the chickens constantly kick up soil and mulch onto it. But, I am determined. Occasionally I will have a pretty path with stones to walk on. And I might change this. I might just make this kind of a mulched path. I'm playing around with that idea for this year. Just, for ease for myself, I guess. And so many sticks falling from this elm tree constantly, so, so much time spent picking up after that tree. But in the foreground, you can see the beautiful Diane witch hazel was in bloom, and it is a bummer that the deer and rabbits nipped it so much, but I was very grateful for what we did have. It's just the most beautiful color, beautiful vibrant red. And as always, getting help from my Serama chickens, who are the least damaging of the chickens in this garden. I did get to plant, or transplant rather, some of the anemone and ranunculus that I had started up in the workshop a few weeks back, or a month or so back at this point, I guess. The temperatures were finally right for that, and as you can see, the anemones were doing incredibly well in the seed tray, and I believe all 20 of them did sprout, did germinate, so that's really exciting. They're all the same variety, the caramel white. The ranunculus didn't fare as well. I don't think any of my rainbow ranunculus germinated. The Courchevel did do better, and then I did have some of the Amandine pastel as well. So I got those transplanted out, and then I went ahead and soaked more corms and just direct planted a bunch of ranunculus corms in the orchard garden, as well as throughout like different beds in the garden. I don't necessarily have high expectations of them, so if I don't get anything, that's okay, that's fine, but just an experiment trying out for myself. And then in some of the rows that I had grown flowers in last year in the orchard garden, I went ahead and weeded those and kind of raked the soil up, made it nice and loose to plant a spring green manure cover crop, which has peas, vetch, and a couple other things that I can't quite remember off the top of my head. I'll put that on the screen. But I don't want this like whole area to be like this sea of mulch. That was never my intention. So I'm testing out the cover crop like in the interim to suppress the weeds and feed the soil while I kind of figure out what it is exactly I want to put in here in the long term, because I haven't quite decided that yet. Maybe it'll just be grass, I'm not sure. I might just have grass pathways between the trees. That might look nice, but it could also be a lot more bulbs, maybe a bunch more peony. I'm not sure yet. And probably one of the most exciting things is I finally got to start planting up my raised beds, or seeding them up rather. So I dug out that lonely chive plant that I had in there for a few years, and I'll just keep that in a planter probably the whole season. I'm not sure that it'll go back into a bed. And got some makeshift trellises put up in this bed as well as the one directly across from it. And I just used these 4-foot green garden stakes that I got a few years back off of Amazon. They have served me pretty well, especially for these purposes. And then this is just some fencing that I had in the back, left over from, who knows what project. And just cut an 8-foot piece of it and use that to trellis my peas. In this bed, I planted an Avalanche snow pea, and then in the other bed, I planted a sugar pea, a sugar snap. And then I also put in a couple varieties of calendula and rows of carrots in this bed. So in between the peas and carrots, there will be some calendula plants. And then in the other bed, it'll be a row of peas, some calendula plants, a row of carrots, and on the other side of the trellis is going to be beets. And in a couple of weeks, I will put in some turnips, but the turnips, they grow much quicker than the beets or carrots. So I was kind of trying to time it so that everything would be harvested about the same time. And I can't remember right offhand what varieties of calendula and carrot and beet and all of that I actually put in here, so I will go back and look at my stakes. I very responsibly labeled everything right at the time that I planted them, so go me. But I'll put the names of everything up on the screen. Most all seeds I think came from Johnny's, a few from Baker Creek Heirlooms. But it felt so good finally being able to plant seeds and getting things started, and seeing the signs of life kind of happening around the gardens. Things are starting to bloom. The daffodils are actually opening up. The Dutch Masters are just this week, and it's only more good things to come. So I'm really just looking forward to more of that, because I know it's coming, and I hope you're experiencing much the same things in your gardens. Thank you for joining me today, and we'll see you in the next video.